It is a story that makes us who we are as humans, the thoughts, emotions, and memories. And it is the storyteller who makes us come alive. In ancient West Africa, specially chosen individuals embraced the role of collecting, maintaining, and dispensing the treasured stories of individuals, families, and dynasties. They were called griots. Through their methodical word choice, masterful poetry, and verbally illustrated stories, they provide us a solid understanding of the greatness that we were, the greatness that we are, and the greatness we are destined to be. Today more than ever, we need the power of our story to be heard, to be listened to be understood. And we need our modern griots to rise up to the challenge. We at Black History 365 gladly accept this challenge. At Black History 365, our goal is to equip our nation's inhabitants and the world at large with a more thorough, candid, and interwoven understanding of African American history and realities within the American and world historical context. To accomplish this ambitious goal, we have created a textbook on African American history that encompasses the history of African Americans starting in Africa until today. Our game-changing textbook, Black History 365, an inclusive account of American history, and its corresponding K-12 curriculum are designed to not only reveal the hidden, undertold, and misconceived portions of African American history, but also to cultivate an atmosphere of being authentic with each other about our nation's past with the intention to heal, not hurt. The textbook meets Texas state standards regarding U.S. history as it provides a healthy survey of national, international, and regional U.S. history through the lens of African Americans. The 10 units of the Black History 365 textbook consist of all-encompassing topics starting from ancient Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, the American system, emancipation, the Great Migration and its aftermath, civil rights and American justice, the economic system, pop culture and black wealth, the Lone Star State, and the North Star, Canadian Black history. The Black History 365 textbook is full of rarely told history lessons and more than 3,000 original artifacts to take students and educators on a colorful and powerful journey to embracing an inclusive account of American history. The engaging textbook entices students to think critically, using well-placed discussion points and sidebars that connect with modern societal challenges. Most importantly, the textbook meets and exceeds Texas state standards so that students can achieve elective credit. Similar to college courses, the Black History 365 textbook and coinciding curriculum can be used independently or as a supplement to existing U.S. history or elective courses. The Black History 365 textbook and curriculum are making history. Through our product, we want to empower all of the youth who get to interact with our project. Learning the powerful lessons of Black history will uplift the knowledge, confidence, and understanding of our nation's youth so they may all be inspired to achieve. So let's fulfill the legacy of Carter G. Woodson. The champion of promoting the learning of Black history is known for saying, "Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history." Now is the time to act for inspiring America's children through the knowledge of their ancestors, and it is up to the brave educational institutions to help accomplish this vital goal.
Good morning. I am Pastor Adrian Reeves, Executive Director for the National African American Missions Council, and I want to welcome you as we continue our Black History series. If you've been following us all month long, we started off with talking about Black Wall Street. Last week we talked about the Africa Study Bible and met with Chief Editor John Joso, who walked us through the compilation and collaboration efforts of that. But today I'm extremely excited for our next chapter in our series to talk about a new textbook that you just saw advertised, Black History 365, and the founder and co-founder of that textbook. So I just want to welcome Dr. Joel Freeman, who will be joining us a little bit later, who's the founder of Black History 365. Joel, glad to have you with us today. How are you?
It's good to be here. I think I noticed on the list that Dr. Milton is already on, ready to be entered in. So
awesome. Well, we will bring him on and promote him as a panelist here so that he can come on and join us. Thank you for sharing that with us. And while he's coming on, there he is. Dr. Milton, can you join us on camera?
There he is. There he is.
Joe has a unique way of being a big brother to me all the time, I'll tell you.
No problem. You guys are all decked out. I'm going to have to get me one of those Black History 365 hats. So thanks for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing, sir?
Good. If you all don't know, when we first started our NAMAC table of brotherhood, both Dr. Milton and Joel were our first panelists on that platform. So thank you guys for returning almost a year later here to talk about, we were talking about racial reconciliation then, but here we're actually celebrating, the historical accomplishments and contributions of African Americans in this country. Dr. Milton, let me ask you, what was your inspiration for putting together this textbook? How did the idea come about?
Well, it was an experience that I had in the fourth grade where my teacher said that she's going to teach Black history. And so I'd gone home to my parents and I was really excited. And I told my mom and dad that, hey, we're going to learn Black history tomorrow. I want to dress up. I want to wear my favorite blue suit. In reality, Pastor, it was my only suit I had. So, I got the suit on and put my little already put together tie on, and I went to school, make sure I sat in the front seat. I was one of 3 kids, Black kids in my class. And the first thing, the film strip came on, the first thing I saw was a so-called slave master beating an enslaved African. And it ushered so much shame and humiliation to me that I wanted to hide under the table. So I remember going home that evening and I was really upset at my mother and father because I said, you guys told me that our history started at the beginning of time. We go all the way back and this is what I saw. And that was my introduction to what the teacher had for me, but it wasn't my introduction to Black history. So my mother affectionately told me that one day you'll be able to right the wrongs. You'll be able to tell that story. So I didn't think anything of it, but one thing in education I saw that many Black children were failing across this nation in public schools because they were not in the curriculum. They could not see themselves in the curricula. So one day I just started writing. After I lost my mother and father, I just started writing. And then I called Joel Freeman. I said, hey man, would you join me with this? So he came to my home in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was living at the time. And the rest, as they say, is history. So we began to go to work. We've evolved to having a team of 70 very, very intelligent folks. Most of our team have terminal degrees, and they've really, really loved this work. They've dedicated their lives to this mission as we have. So that was the origins of it, to really, really get the information out there and to really tell our story. We call this our love letter to the world.
Wow, and it's a pretty extensive love letter. Every chapter is a new discovery into us as a people. Dr. Joel, let me ask you, what made you say yes and want to see this work through when you received the call from Dr. Milton?
First of all, I want to say a shout out to Andrew, Dan, Don, Deborah, Wanda, Kate, Lydell, Marilyn, Ruthie, and T, and Paula, and so many others that are on with us today. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And we just hope that when you hear our words, that you also hear the music from our hearts, and the music of love and passion and focus on this particular topic. Walter and I, he didn't mention this, but he was a social studies teacher for 5 years. He was a principal for 6. He was also a superintendent in the Capital District of Springfield, Illinois, which is Abraham Lincoln country, for about 14 years. And so 25 plus years in education, he invited me to come out to his school district to speak. And so I did some training for him and his cabinet. And he did something that was unusual. He invited me to his house. And usually when you're a consultant, it's just like, hey, there's nice restaurants around your hotel. See you tomorrow morning at 8:30, and we'll pick this up again and move forward. But when he invited me to visit and meet his wife and his children, it really made a big impression on me. And we kept in touch, because I've had that rarely happen, in various places I've traveled around the world. And so we kept in touch. And then when he called, my wife and I own a rather large Black history collection, over 3,000 pieces. And so, I guess, just thinking about my work in this area over the years and our friendship, it was just like, not even I didn't have to think about it, didn't have to pray about it, just like, yeah, let's do this. He barely got the question out. And it's like, you had me at hello,
Absolutely. You all say that you put the text together to heal and not hurt. Why is that necessary to say? What do you mean by sharing that, Dr. Milton?
Well, one of the things that we found imperative to really put forth information, like Joel always says, we have issues that have vexed our country, major issues, and there's a lot of pain in those issues. And so our goal was to put out information that was going to be relevant, that was going to be culturally relevant and culturally responsive, but also that was going to be the truth, that we were going to be truth tellers. And so we looked at different aspects of research, different aspects of history. We looked at Afrocentric history, Eurocentric history, and we said that we're going to go the route of truth centrism, that we're going to tell the ugly truth, the beautiful truth, and we're going to try to dispel the lies. And so that's why the subtitle becomes very, very critical, that our history is an inclusive part of not only world history, but American history. Black history is not outside of the game history. It is an intimate part of the game. We are the movers and shakers, not only of the universe, but also this great nation. Had it not been for us, there would not be an America. And I think that that's something that we have to be truth tellers about. And I think that when we can deal with the truth, no matter how painfully it may occur, then that really serves as the impetus for us to bring about healing and bring about change and an awakening that kills many stereotypes and many misconceptions. And so we have to have that voice. Our history is beyond Black History Month. That's why we say Black History 365. And Black History Month is nothing but an anniversary or celebration of that. But it's every day. And our history, this book, as big as it is and as thick as it may be, we couldn't get all the information in there. Joel and I spent a lot of time talking. Oh, we got to make sure we got to put this in the next. We got to make sure we put this in the next one. And we probably will be writing for many years to come because it's just that vast. And hopefully when we have gone on, that there will be others behind us in the spirit of BH 365 that will continue that, because our history is almost like forever.
Awesome. Joel, Dr. Milton speaks about what you guys had to put in, decide what would go in, what would stay out. Can you name for us some of the unique features about Black History 365? Does it follow the mode of most textbooks? What makes it stand out against other textbooks?
Yes. First of all, for those trying to describe this over Zoom is like trying to give a haircut over the phone. It's very difficult. And as you hold that in your hands, it's 5.5 pounds. And you can open up pretty much anywhere in the book, and it's like a museum of pictures. And then also we have different things, like we have QR codes, and these QR codes make this very tech savvy. I don't know if I've ever seen another textbook with QR codes, because once you bake it into a text, then what happens is that you're stuck with that QR code. It's like, what happens if that video goes down? And, if there's some other technical aspects. So we have a proprietary process that we developed that allows us to change the target of a QR code within 45 seconds once we've identified. And every night at 8 o'clock, it's 8 minutes. We scan the entire book and determine what's happening with the QR codes. And so we also have an advisory board made up of folks like Kathy Hughes, Smokey Robinson, Benjamin Crump, Ben Watson, and Alveda King, and just a host of people, Alex Haley's grandson, Bill Haley Jr., and many others that we could go into. But one of the main things is that there's 4 things we wanted to draw readers to. Number one is to become a critical thinker. I don't know about you, but every time I use Siri, I feel my brain turning to mush incrementally, just a tiny bit at a time. My critical thinking skills fleeing, and my and just kind of getting lazy in terms of my critical thinking. So we wanted to invite, especially this whole generation, to think about things critically, and then secondly, to become compassionate listeners with each other. Because so much that happens, it's just like, we're dialoguing, let's say it's cross-cultural dialogue. We're thinking of a response while someone else is speaking, and that's not real communication. It's more of a, let me think about something else while you're talking. Thirdly, so we then wanted to have people become fact-based, respectful communicators, and every word in that is important, so that it's not about feelings are important, but facts are something that they're incontrovertible. It's just there it is, and that's why what Walter said about being truth-centric. That's the razor's edge that we brought everything on. So that we didn't go on one side or the other politically. We didn't bend the arc toward one political party machine or the other, and that's why people have accepted this, I think, so well. And there's not anything in that book that Walter and I didn't discuss. Images, word, verbiage, topics, and everything, and how we are going to present this in a truth-centric manner. Fourthly, built upon the first 3, is to become action. We're inviting people to become action-oriented solutionists. And as we gaze across our whole country, we can see that some people, I think, can tend to be problemizers. It's just like, we got a problem, and like Jeff Wright, my good friend and our good friend, mutual friend. He talked about how when he was a young man, he had one child, another one on the way. He and his wife were looking for a brand new, a good car, and they only had $1,000 in their budget. And he said that what happened is that they went from car dealership to car dealership. They're checking all around. Finally, they found this orange Scirocco, VW Scirocco. Now, he'd never heard of a VW Scirocco before, let alone orange car, but it fit their budget. He says once they got in the car, they began to see VW Sciroccos everywhere. He says it was like an amazing thing. And the lesson that he gave me on that, he says, if someone gets in an anger-driven vehicle or a problemizing vehicle, they're going to see problems and things to justify their anger wherever they go. But if someone gets into a vision-oriented vehicle, they're going to see things that fulfill the vision that is in their heart everywhere. It's going to pop up all over the place. And so I just, there's so many other realms. The elephant experience, we can talk about that a little bit. That really sets us apart. But that's enough for that right now.
No, let me share a couple of things with our audience, and I want to invite our audience to ask questions. You can use the Q&A section if you want to ask questions. If you just want to comment, say amen, thank you, you can go ahead and use the chat feature. But as I scan the book, I have to admit, I'm somewhat biased. I've got a marker here. I see you guys have included the Black church and Black missionaries Also, you specifically go into highlighting Black women in the church and their voices and how African-American missionaries went all over the world. So I'd have to say that's my favorite section of the book, just because that's what we do here. So I want to talk about why you felt the need, not just the Black church. I think we know in our culture that is a staple in our community, but you guys actually went into missionaries and women. And so I want to talk about why you thought that was important. I've never known a textbook to come with a soundtrack. This one does. So how did that happen? I guess if you've got someone like Smokey Robinson on your board of advisors, you better have a little bit of music to go along with that. And then something that was unique is Unit 9. You actually go state by state and talk about the contributions African Americans have had in each state. So I'm a horrible interviewer. I just dumped a whole bunch on you guys. But when I look at my favorite sections of the book, you've got these Black missionaries that we don't always hear about and talk about, specifically women that we don't always celebrate. It's got some music you guys have got about the soundtrack to this book. And then you're going state by state and showing where African Americans have made an impact in that specifically state, and that specific state. So wherever you are in the US, there's some African Americans you should know about. So Dr. Milton, can you speak to some of those things?
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted Black women. As they say, Black women have always been the backbone of our culture. And actually, oftentimes, many Black women, they are doing incredible work behind the scenes. So we wanted to take the opportunity to really highlight them, as we highlighted Black women throughout the Civil Rights Movement. And we knew as we were doing this work that we were going to share information that has never been shared or exposed to the world. And Joe can definitely attest to that, especially around the Civil Rights Movement. He could talk about that a little later, some of our research and what we've discovered with that. But the music was an essential component because we wanted to make sure that we were going to grab the reader and to snatch the reader in. And as you know, music is the foundation of our culture, no matter what type of music it is. I mean, even when we came over here in servitude, if you will, we leaned on our music, on our voice, on drums, and our ability to dance and have rhythm and all of those things. So that was really incredibly important. And then the third point you had, which was really good, I thought I had it, but I lost it. If you can help me, I would definitely.
Sure, no problem. It's Unit 9 where you guys go state by state and highlight African Americans and their contributions to that state.
Absolutely. And we wanted to be very intentional with that. That was our goal. We wanted to highlight each state because every state can have its own book, if you will. But we wanted to really identify those things that were critical to that state. And some people that we found out, they were not even aware, Pastor Reeves, that happened in their state. They weren't even aware of that knowledge. So we were definitely sharing information that was of value to them. And the reason that we did it, because in Texas, during the time when we were writing the book, Texas had just passed legislation, and they said that every high school in the state of Texas has to teach Black history. It is mandatory. It's an edict. And we talked about it a little yesterday. One of our advisory board members went into that. So we wanted to make sure that we had state-aligned standards for every state. We wanted to acknowledge every state. And then we wanted to make sure that we differentiated Unit 9 from the state of Texas, because if you look at the Texas textbook, we only talk about the state of Texas Black history in Unit 9. So we wanted to give kudos and we wanted to give some homage to those other states and some things that have taken place around the historical construct.
Awesome. Dr. Joel, did you want to respond to any of those in terms of Black missionaries, focuses on women, the music soundtrack, or any of the 50 state contributions of African Americans?
Yes, I mean, there's folks like Amanda Smith. I mean, just think about, just the white controlled mission agencies not allowing her to join because she's of African descent. And then she goes to India, she goes to Liberia. She's an incredible singer, and all on her own horsepower. I mean, it just defies, when you think of At one point in the textbook, we included the whole idea of blades of grass in a concrete jungle. Concrete can be a metaphor for all the horrific things that have happened, and we could name it, but we can't exaggerate when even trying to describe the horrific nature of slavery, the slave trade, and all the other things that are around it. And then to see the people that came up through the concrete, if you will, using that as a metaphor, it's just astonishing to me, you know. And then the meadows that occurred through the concrete. So the thicker the concrete, the more inspirational the story. The 50 states, that came about because we did something, as Walter mentioned, we did something for the state of Texas, because you just have to tip the 10-gallon hat to Texas. You know, it's just something you got to do, especially when they were avant-garde in the way that they introduced legislation that every high school had to teach Black history. And so we have a whole textbook called Lone Star Edition, just for Texas, which you heard about in the video in the very beginning. And then we have the 50 Stars Edition, where we've taken that whole unit, the 9th unit, and just before the Canadian unit, the 10th unit, and we wanted to give a panoramic view of all 50 states that would then allow a teacher, an educator in Illinois, Maryland, wherever, Texas, Colorado, could then use that as a segue to say, well, you know, we're here in Virginia, but we're in Virginia Beach, and they didn't mention anything about Virginia Beach in the textbook, let's say, using that as an example, but we're going to talk about Suffolk, Virginia, and what happened here. So it becomes a wonderful segue that we pay homage to Virginia, but now the teacher now has the ability to segue from that to something more specific and localized. And what was the third thing?
It was the Black women.
Oh,
I think you covered.
Yeah, I did talk about that. There's something else too, but I can't quite remember.
The music, Joel.
Oh, the music. Oh, how could I forget that? How could I forget that? Yeah, the music is, what's so cool about the music is we have a friend of ours by the name of Dr. Kevin K.O. Cates. And he was a super producer for, Jay-Z, Drake, Snoop Dogg, Pharrell, T.I., Rick Ross. He was a super producer. His albums, from what I understand, it was over 33 million in all. And so he just became disillusioned with the whole rap hip hop industry because of the pejorative view of women, the drugs, the violence, the sex. And he loves the Lord, and he just, they thought he was nuts. And so he began to work on his own things in terms of education. So when Walter and I went to Atlanta, he was Grammy nominated, and he's got all people phoning up, say, hey, would you work on this project, that project? We went to Atlanta and spent a day with him. When he saw what we were doing, and back then, I'll tell you what, we didn't have this. In fact, I think we had a fake book that looked like this cover that had 33 pages with some stuff that much of it didn't even end up in this textbook. And then everything else was a white pages, just filler pages. And we said, well, this is what a blizzard looks like, and so what happened is that we just gave him enough that he said, this is what I want to do. So when we finally got the whole thing done, he and his team took the lyrics. The lyrics were inspired by chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, 41 songs in all, which then became like an anthology of history that many people in the music industry who've listened to the music have said could be the next Hamilton on Broadway. It's that good. In fact, I had one friend of ours, Steve Fitzhugh. He's in the studio all the time. And he called me up. I told him about the music. He looked at it up on iTunes. And by the way, it hit #1 on iTunes downloads on hip hop category, which is the toughest category. And he called me up the next day and he says, I'm mad at you. And I says, what did I do, Steve? He said, you didn't tell me how good this was. He says, I started listening at 10:30 thinking that, in his words, that the first song would be whack, or maybe the second song or the third song, would be whack. And he said, He says, I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I could not get to sleep because every song was lighting like Mount Vesuvius, igniting imagination. And he says, he just was blown away by it. He says, it's like the Beatles, every song, especially after Rubber Soul album, every song is different. And he says the same way that there was not a formulaic approach to this. And Ko, if he were here, he would say that it's like being a journalist. You could be in the most horrific war-torn situation where a child has had a leg blown off, and you have to be dispassionate to report the news that you're seeing. And you can cry later, but you have to be and he says the same way most rap artists could not do this. And we've had rap artists tell us that because it's so emotional, there's so much harm, there's so much evil, there's so much shame that it's very hard to step back and do something educationally. And all I can say is that he nailed it on every song.
Wow, you're making my job even harder. I have a staff that is begging me to ask you guys to send them copies, and now they're going to want the soundtrack too. So thank you for that wonderful commercial. Dr. Milton, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to say that it takes you on a lyrical journey. I mean, the lyrics are just unbelievable. And it's amazing because they're the words from the textbook. And so when you put it in the format of music, there's a whole nother level of learning that takes place. And I just I can never give Ko enough kudos for the incredible work that he's done. And actually, with this textbook, we are making history, because I think that this has been one of the only textbooks that I've ever seen that's been multidimensional, the way that it is, to have sound, to have the QR codes, to have the visualization that we have with the images from the Freeman Institute. I mean, it's just incredible. And so I just wanted to kind of extend that out on the music, because every time I listen to the music, I've listened to it hundreds of times, it's just like the first time. I mean, you just could not get enough. You can't get sick of the songs. You just want to keep hearing it. I mean, we were talking in Alaska yesterday, and the music came on, and everyone started bobbing and weaving. I mean, it just really takes over your spirit. And this is really all godly inspired. And I just want to just go on record by saying that I accept no accolades. I give them all the glory to God, because Joel and I were just vessels to do this work. And then the imagery that we have between us, a white guy and a black guy, to pull something off of this significance is unbelievable. And I think that it's a true testimony to this world.
Yeah, I want to thank you both and just take a moment. Racial reconciliation or healing, or whatever term people like to use, I think there has to be a witness of that in the body of Christ. And both of you represent that you can redeem history, that you can rediscover history in a way that is healing and meaningful. And you're showing how when the cultures come together, great solutions happen and great honor happens. So we just want to honor you all for showing. And then we become the example to the world of what that looks like. Not arguing on the steps of the Capitol, not dividing ourselves by red and blue sides, but actually saying the kingdom of God comes in power and authority. It comes through these stories. It comes through being able to retell history in an honorable way. Let me ask you guys something.
Can I hitchhike off that?
Sure.
Can I hitchhike off that? I'm sorry. One of the things that Walter and I wrestled with is how do we bring healing into the classroom and still deal with the truth? And that is a Herculean task to try to figure out, is it mutually exclusive? When you tell the truth, does it make people freak out? And all the, it's like water, pain and anger is like water. It goes to the most basic common denominator, a pain in someone's life. And then boom, it's like, it gets crazy from there. So we came up with a proprietary process called the elephant experience. I hope I can pull one up real quickly here, but it's, here's one, I think. Yeah. So wherever a person sees this elephant in the textbook, this is like, it's like going to a Thai restaurant or a Mexican restaurant, and you see a little red pepper next to a hot dish on the menu. And you intuitively know that's going to be hot and spicy. And some are attracted and some are repelled by that little red pepper in the menu. Well, this is our red pepper. And so we identified over 50 hot topics. I mean, we're talking about Uncle Tom, should we tear the statues down, 3/5 of the human being, Black people in the deadly dance with both American political party machines, 3/5 of the human being, the N-word, reparations, all these different topics, manifest destiny. And we developed a how do we do this before we do the what, talk about the what. And the Elephant Experience is designed that it helps the students come up with, they develop their own code of conduct, rules of engagement made up of we will not statements. They develop their own talking stick, and so that whoever is holding the talking stick has the authority to speak, everyone else has the authority to listen. And this is, I'm kind of giving it 30,000 feet. Now they're ready to deal with these difficult topics and use the Socratic method. And wherever there's a binary choice, Walter and I do not tip our hand. We're not here to tell people what to think. We're hoping to teach people how to think. And so using the Socratic method and looking at one side and the other through the QR codes, like let's say the difference between the philosophy of W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, is looking at both sides and then discussing it and coming to hopefully individual and or collective understanding about that. And we have stories we can tell you, it'd be too much time, but how this is bringing healing, not division.
Wow, we are launching a podcast in a couple of months called The Table of Brotherhood. We're taking it off of Zoom webinars into podcast formats. So we'll have to have you guys back. I mean, just W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T alone, you could spend some time there talking about their differences of ideology. I love your authority to listen. Think about that. You have the authority to listen, and this whole idea of addressing the elephant in the room and giving people the tools of how to do that in a peaceful, educational manner. Dr. Milton, let me ask you, when I think of a textbook and you're an educator, I instantly think about what age group is this for? Yet you have designed a curriculum that is from kindergarten to 12th grade. How do you do that? How can I take something like this and teach it to my kindergartner, but also give it to my senior in high school? Where's the secret sauce in that?
That's a great question, and I have some news for you today.
Okay.
So our professional development executive, our director rather, she says this is more than a textbook, it's a culture. And so born out of that statement and that conversation, we have gone back and we have developed 6 additional books, and they just arrived today in the warehouse. That's what I was doing this morning when the trucks came in to try to help the unloading process. But so we have 3rd grade, we have 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And the version that you have is 9 through 16, because they're using the book at several colleges and universities across the country, a number of them. And so we wanted to make sure that we cover that. In I think June, the pre-K through 2nd grade will be completed. So now we have pre-K all the way through the college level and beyond. So we've done the work for schools, and the challenge that we have is that the first order that we have delivered today, schools have already bought them. The elementary and middle schools are so hungry and thirsty for this information that it's unbelievable. And so we wanted to make sure that we covered ourselves at every grade level, because the younger, developmentally, according to the research, the younger that we start, we increase the probability of that healing to take place sooner, where it's not even an issue to those children. And so we definitely wanted to do it. And we have experts. Our curriculum team, they're experts. They understand educational research. They understand developmental research. They understand early childhood research. And it's a lot different than people think. And so there's a lot of thinking that goes behind this. And they were remarkable in terms of helping us to finalize those other books as well.
Now, from my understanding, there's also an electronic or audio version of some of this curriculum. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we have ebooks, and our ebooks are very interactive. They truly are an instructional tool for schools and homes, because this conversation is beyond schools. I mean, every home should have these tools. Also, we have a number of, let's see if I can get it here. We have a number of activity guides that we use too for school districts. And then we have the teacher resource guides or the parent resource guide that can help parents and teachers and educators to use the textbook or the books or the culture, if you will, as an instructional tool.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm an executive pastor, and we have a daycare in our church, and we're thinking about turning our after-school program into a place where we teach culture. And so those resources help us to teach African-American children what they're not getting in their regular school districts. I've been to a couple of you all's virtual open houses. And so for our audience, they are going around the country. I don't really have to go around the country. They're doing it through Zoom, through virtual open houses, presenting this material in the textbook to school districts. What has been the response, Joel, that you've seen from school districts, and what districts, what states, what schools are picking up Black History 365?
Well, we thank you for asking that. We have we just came back from Peoria last week, and it was kind of a soft launch or whatever you want to call it because of COVID. They launched it, but we had, I think it was 40 student leaders in our group, and then we had about 60 people on Zoom. And we had some folks from Denver, from Ireland, from Canada, and it just was an incredible time together. And so we have we're in Denver, Brooklyn, New York, Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, and it's beginning to migrate out to the other different boroughs. And help me out here, Walter. St. Louis.
Yeah. Joel is right. I mean, New York City alone is just unbelievable. They have well over 3 million students there, but we are all throughout the state of Texas. We're in Dallas. We're in Illinois. We just had a video. A district contiguous to Chicago just did an incredible news report yesterday on our textbook.
Proviso.
Yeah, proviso and the infusion of Black history into their school district. And we have schools throughout. I think that all over the country, we have well over 100 in 20, 30, 40 districts, too many to mention on this call. And then we have private schools, we have charter schools, we have colleges and universities, and every day, our team, they're developing partnerships every day. And so I'm just, like I said, I'm speechless when it comes to this, and I'm just a vessel trying to do the work of the Most High God.
Man, you're doing an awesome job. And I love how you have approached this holistically, because you're not just doing it for educators, you actually have resources so that parents can be empowered, African-American parents, parents who want their children to learn Black history. And so there are resource guides as well. And so when we send out this recording, we will also send out links to their websites where you can purchase, view, and see these things. And so if you were here at the beginning, you saw the promotional video. So you guys are doing an awesome, fantastic job. What can we do to get the word out and partner with you guys? Where do you need help in terms of spreading the word? What can our audience do who's chiming in and said, hey, how do I get this word out? How do I let people know?
Oh, yeah. Well, if I can just jump right in, I think that one of the things that we want to do, and we just want to go on the highest mountain that we can find and really bring clarity around and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but the ignorance around CRT. Actually, our book is exactly what that conversation needs, because we don't feel that we have to denounce anyone to elevate anyone else. We just tell the truth. The truth is the truth. That's number one. And number two, when you look at the origins of CRT, it's really a graduate law course at Harvard University. And people try to turn that, what the truth really is, into something that is not significant, number one, that's not accurate, and that's even more unhealthy for this nation. We have a response to critical race theory that we put together, and that really hasn't been an issue that we faced, because this information is godly inspired, and it just has a tendency to just trailblaze right through that. And then when we do have questions, we can bring clarity. But if the team, the listeners today, can have an understanding of that and really push this and help us push this into many homes, into many families, into many people, because for so many of us, we have no connection to who we really are. And so we often behave, we often live based on the standards that those who oppressed us have given us. And so we have to have a sense of clarity and understanding of that truth. And it can only lift us up and empower us, especially our young people.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I feel like we as Christians have to remember that the Lord is not confused about his position on issues, right? And the ways of Jesus are very simple, straightforward, honoring of dignity. When we bring all these other perspectives in, that's what complicates it. And we need to get back to the simple truth of the scripture. And I feel like the way in which you guys have addressed this is so biblical, and it's so clear, right? It doesn't really need to be a debate. We're in a kingdom, we serve a king, and he is very clear on what his position is on these issues. Right. We don't need to confuse it with other ideologies. Joel, and as a white brother, speaking into the issue of CRT and being a part of addressing this in the textbook, why was that important to you, and what was your engagement like with that discussion?
Well, there's no topic that you can bring up that Walter and I have not dealt with. And because you can imagine putting together a textbook, every topic, lynching, redlining, I mean, all these different things come up. And we just kept on that razor's edge of truth centrism. And because it's not, I'm from Canada, and so I have a white consciousness and a Canadian consciousness, and which I'm kind of a weird breed, if you will, because and Walter can attest to that. I'm a little bit crazy. But the thing is that when it comes to this topic, we just knew, going back to something I said before, we could not bend the arc toward one political party machine or the other, because then it becomes a whole political thing, and then we're missing everybody. So if all we did was speak to 50% of the country, then the other 50% of the country isn't hearing. And then if we turn and speak to this 50% of the country, the other 50%, we're all in our little bubbles. And I don't know if social media has amplified it, or it contributed to it, or is the originator of it. I don't know. But I know that we've had a lot of history of pain in this country, and it's now up front and center. And so it's something that is ancient and something that is stable is truth. And so just by sticking to that, and I don't know of anybody on the right or the left politically that is against critical thinking, compassionate listening, fact-based, respectful communicating, and action-oriented solutionizing. And so by keeping our focus on that, it's never a fad. It's always something, whether you're talking about Aristotle and Socrates and some of Nietzsche and Hegel and Kant and all the different philosophers. Those four things are solid in terms of debate and understanding. And by the way, also, when we look at the Wiley College story back in the early 1930s or so, The Great Debaters, the movie with Denzel Washington, one thing that you notice, and anyone participating in the Zoom knows, if you went to debate class, you had to know both sides in order to effectively debate one side. And sometimes in debate class, you had to take a side that you're totally against in order and debate it effectively. And so that's what we're trying to do in the critical thinking, the Socratic thinking, and methodology, and all the rest of it, is to pry people loose from the confirmation bias bubbles, to pry people loose from their echo chambers. And we all have it. I have it. Walter has it, you have it. Everybody, we have things that we lean toward, and we just have to be as objective as possible. And like, I think it was back in the 4th century, we have the statement, seek to understand before seeking to be understood. And doesn't preclude the need to be understood, doesn't even guarantee that we will be understood, but it is the whole idea of seeking to understand, asking open-ended questions, listening, then listening some more, then listening some more, then listening some more. And that seeking to understand, I think, is such an important component to all this, especially for those of us who are of Caucasian descent, is because many times when a Black person and a white person are talking about something, and then immediately the white person says, we came from Ireland. We were the offscouring of the world. My grandparents, none of my people ever were involved in the slavery or the slave trade. So, and then the Black person, their eyes glaze over and they say, okay, I can talk about sports. I can talk about the weather, but there's certain things I can't talk about with this person. And so it just sends a signal, and then it's just like, okay, here it is. And on social media, that about 7% of communication is what we say, content. About 38% is how we say it, decibel level, voice inflection, and 55% is body language. So really on social media, texting and everything, we're only communicating about 5 to 7%. That's why on social media, I've told people I will refuse to talk about things. And if I do talk about something, it'll be at least 3 to 5 days after the event has happened, because facts begin to emerge and you begin to see things differently. And emotion causes people to say things that then a divide has happened that is irreparable, and the damage has happened. People block each other and then they never talk to each other again. So, those are the kinds of things I think are important when we discuss CRT. And by the way, the T stands for theory. And in the scientific method, a theory needs to have robust debate. And so I'm all for robust debate in the public square. I'm just not for someone that has an eisegetical, and theologically, we have exegetical view of scripture and an eisegetical view. The exegetical view is let the scripture speak, and I submit to the rules of interpretation that come out of that. And the interpretation emerges. One interpretation, many applications. But eisegetical is I come with a preconceived idea, and then I look for things to support that. And I think that happens in race relations and discussions and conversations. And I think that we have to pry ourselves loose, and that takes a lot of self-awareness to do that.
Yeah, we're going to have you back in a whole section on Christian behavior in social media. That definitely needs to be addressed in the church. Thank you.
We have a whole thing in the textbook about that, by the way. The whole section, Black people and the deadly dance with both American political party machines. We have, I think it's one page at least, on how to deal with this, respectfully. Because you have Eurocentric views, which has centuries of traction, and Afrocentric views has only decades, comparatively. And so, when a Eurocentric scholar starts talking, and then an Afrocentric scholar starts talking, it gets crazy real quickly. And we could go on and on about that, but I'll shut up.
No problem. We're almost at the bottom of our hour. I just want to share with our audience that NAMAC are celebrating 10 years this year. And so we encourage you to go to our events page and register for the conference. Our theme this year is Reaching Generations and Nations. God wants to do a work in every generation and every nation. And so we are going to be at McLean this year. We're returning back to an in-person conference, but it will be slightly hybrid. So we're celebrating for a whole week, and that is June 20th through 24th. Bring your children, bring your youth. You can stop at the NAMAC store and buy some gear on your way to the conference. And so it's June 20th through the 24th. The first 2 days will be virtual. The last 3 days will be in person. We've got some great plenary speakers here. And so if you want to register for the virtual event, just go to our events page here. If you want to register for the in-person event or both, again, those registrations are now open. We are accepting exhibitors and sponsors. And so we encourage you to join us this year for the conference. In fact, Joel has been there before, so we're going to have to invite him back real soon to be a part of what we're doing. As we close out, Dr. Milton, Do you have a favorite section, favorite part, favorite unit of the book? I kind of shared mine. I'm prone to Black missionaries, and I like the 50 states. So you have a favorite section, like that's your sweet spot?
Well, let me go on record saying that I love all of the book. That's number one. But I really love ancient Africa, because I think that that's where things were set in motion. That's where the foundation of greatness really began. And I love ancient history, as well as American history. And so I was really excited and just incredibly thankful of the work that we've done. So the beginning of the book, the ancient Africa aspect of the book, and the patience that we exemplified to even get to slavery, because over so many years had taken place even prior to that. And we knew that we had to tell that story, because oftentimes books of this ilk, traditional American history textbooks, that's where they start. So we wanted to go back to the beginning of time. We looked at the etymology of that word, and it took us to a Kubulan, Libya, and different words that really describe, that territory. And then it took us to the final description, and it was Garden of Eden, where civilization and where life started. And so that's something that we should really be proud of. And so I was really just amazed with that level of ancient history that we were able to put forth.
Awesome. Joel, how about you? Favorite section, favorite unit of the book?
Once again, I love it all. I learned so much in researching and writing, editing, and everything else that both Walter and I did in this project, and others helped. But it's, I guess, Canada. I'm from Alberta, Canada, left home when I was 17, long-haired hippie, dope-smoking fool, and came to the United States, said, what the heck is going on down here? And but the section on Canada, we have a timeline that starts in 1491 all the way to modern times. But also, the whole question about Canada, most books we look at, they only give like 3-4 sentences to Canada. What happened to the folks in the South, like Harriet Tubman rescued, that were suffering from Stockholm syndrome in some cases, fear of the unknown, fear of the future, all the different things that one could imagine? Can't read, so looking at a signpost, what does that mean? And all these different things, and people having different agendas and different things pulling at them. They ended up going to the north. The fugitive slave laws pushed them into Canada. What happened to them? And anyone who gets a textbook, because this engages all ages from K to Gray, it will find some incredible stories of people successful. I'll tell you one quick one. No, I won't, because we got only 1 minute left. So anyway, you got to go to the book to find out. It's just fascinating.
Awesome. I love that, from K to Gray. So we want to encourage you, if you enjoyed this conversation and want to share it, if you're interested in others like it, you want to go to NAMAC's YouTube channel, just type in NAMAC, Table of Brotherhood, NAMAC Black History Series, and you'll see our previous discussions, and this one will be available to you within the next week. Dr. Milton, thank you so much. And Dr. Joel, thank you so much for your friendship, for your work, for your collaboration, what you are doing to help heal history and redeem it, and the way in which you're doing it represents the love of Christ. So we love you, brothers. Going to ask you to stick around for about 5 more minutes, and we're at the bottom of our broadcast. So thank you, and come see us next week, where we're going to close out our Black History series, where we're going to be talking about the state of the Black church, and what does the future look like for African Americans as they are impacting the world through missions, through pastoral leadership, through civic engagement. Thank you for joining us here on NAMAC's Black History Series. I'm Pastor Adrian Reeves. We love you, we beat you to it, and we'll see you next week.